My career aspirations are pretty bold, but I would like to be Australia's first dedicated space diplomat.
So I think the idea that we just have to wait and that time will fix the problem is really damaging because it doesn't.
Anecdotally, I've heard from female friends who've said that they often felt they couldn't join a certain group because they weren't good enough.
I guess with me, I'm in a biotech space, so I'm trying to develop something that can help save lives.
Actually, women can play a really strong role in translating our research, our amazing findings into practice.
So today we're here to discuss the state of play for women in STEMM. In many areas of STEMM, women are very underrepresented. In some areas like technology, engineering, maths and physics, the number of women is very low from the beginning and they stay low throughout careers. But in the biomedical and medical sciences and the biological sciences, there are actually a lot of women that start off in a career in those areas, but still when we get to the senior levels, we drop off to about 20%. And so it's important to be discussing these issues and trying to identify the reasons that women either don't enter into these careers or leave once they're in there. So here's a question for the students. Do you notice gender disparity in the classroom? If you do, does it bother you or is it something that you just don't think about?
I mean, big yes. Especially, I think, now in the senior years of my economics degree, maybe more so than law. I noticed that one of the really big issues, and this might be the same in your field, is retention. So this became so much of an issue that it was really the impetus behind starting our society, Women in Economics. Yeah, it definitely does affect you. It can be quite confronting.
What are some of the issues that you think cause this steep decline in economics?
I think it's interesting because it's sort of a mix of maybe the attitude that some girls have when they're confronted with often very theoretical and maths heavy subjects at the beginning, and they're all new to them because anecdotally I've heard from female friends studying economics in the years above who've said that they often felt they couldn't join a certain group because they weren't good enough.
In history and philosophy of science, we normally find there's a pretty good balance of genders, but something we find is we give a lot of weighting to classroom participation, and not all students, women and men, and people from different cultural backgrounds, feel comfortable speaking up about really big issues where they have to take an opinion. I'd actually be really interested to know what it was like studying when you were at uni, Renee.
I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions when we think about gender diversity is that the problem is not really changing. Even in the early 80s, for an example, the School of Chemistry here had around 50% of women doing a PhD in the early 80s, yet there's only 1 or 2 female professors in chemistry, and nationally or even internationally, the number of women that reach professor level in chemistry is very low, around 10 to 15%. So I think the idea that we just have to wait and that time will fix the problem is really damaging because it doesn't. Maybe more girls that are entering engineering now than there were before, but even in the areas where there have predominantly been a lot of women, the numbers aren't really changing. So even in medicine and the natural sciences, we haven't really seen a shift, and if anything, we've gone slightly backward. We actually have to change the system and stop trying to fix women and encourage women to lean in or step forward or act in a different way. We just have to change the system so that everyone can feel more included and participate, and then that will address not only the gender issue but also bigger issues around cultural diversity, LGBTQI and all disability and all of those things.
When I joined the Department of Cardiology at Westmead, I was one woman and now we've got 3. Admittedly, we've got over 20 some cardiologists, and so obviously we're still in the minority, but I hope that it's changing. I agree with Renee, there are some things that don't look like has changed at all, but every now and then I feel that there is some hope.
There's definitely hope, and I think the thing is we're having the conversations now. We have recognised as an issue and we're starting to discuss it and come up with ways to address it, and so yeah, definitely hope. And there's definitely change on the way, but yeah, it's not just about waiting for things to fix themselves.
I guess my question is, as someone who's just really starting out in their career in STEM, what are the most rewarding aspects, do you think?
you can often be a minority, and minorities have very interesting perspectives, and especially when we're looking at things like engineering and technology development, and the users of technology are 50% women. So being a woman and being able to be involved in teams that are either developing new technology or new projects, you can give a perspective that is sometimes unique, especially as a minority, but also really critical for really the end users. Personally, the work that I do in developing countries, you know, women and especially children bear the brunt of a lot of the issues with water and disease and these types of things. But so frequently it's men who are the policy makers, decision makers and the designers of technology, and when things don't work out, I think they've sometimes missed what the end user actually wanted.
I don't know whether anyone here has a mentor or is currently a mentor, and whether you think that's like an important role that we should be looking at and maybe talking more about to encourage more women into these fields.
I actually think that's critical.
Yeah.
I think for women, particularly, Renee was referring to women can often get to a certain point in their career and they don't proceed up into the higher levels, and the balance becomes more male dominated at the higher echelons. And I think to get through that process, women really need mentors to help having the confidence to think, yep, I can do this. For me personally, my mentors were the ones who just gave me that gentle little shove from behind, a little bit of encouragement. It was like, you can do this, Leanne. You know, you go and do it. And also really thinking beyond next week, having somebody to ask the question, what are you going to be doing in 5 years' time?
I really agree with what you're saying there, Leanne. And I think another important thing to think about is in addition to mentors, sponsors. And I think this is where men can sometimes have an advantage over women, because mentors are great for those career discussions and giving you confidence. But a sponsor will really put you forward for things. And if they believe in you, they'll suggest you for different roles and different committees. And so it's really important to think about both of those things.
So how do you find a mentor? I mean, that's the big question.
Let people know that you're interested in different opportunities as well, because, you know, if you don't say anything, people aren't necessarily going to tap you on the shoulder.
And I mean, I think you can start with senior members of your faculty. That's usually a good place to start. Or if you've got a PhD supervisor who you get on with, they can be a good first mentor for you. And you tend to identify people who you communicate well with and who you trust. And it can be quite a formal thing, or it can be a very informal thing. So the Franklin Women's Mentoring Program is another example of a really wonderful mentoring program.
There's another one called IMNIS, I think, as well, which is really good.
Yeah.
And I think we underestimate the value of networking as well. Well, I did anyway when I started out, especially within academia and then also in industry. So making sure you run in both circles, you never know who you'll meet and how they will impact your journeys.
And I think sometimes people think of a mentor has to be the whole package. And I've definitely had mentorship from different people, from different aspects of their career or how they operate that I like. And you don't have to necessarily adopt everything they do, but for me, I've pieced things together. I don't have a lot of opportunity for the perfect female mentor in my field.
One of my mentors from the professional world when I worked there, she had a really good way of describing it, which was that you need a board of directors. And so on your board of directors, you need people with different strengths, different backgrounds. You need a split of women, men, minorities, a really diverse group, so that when you've got really big questions, you've got about 6 or 8 people that can be a sounding board for you.
Leanne, what advice do you have for girls or young women deciding to choose their careers?
I think, firstly, keep an open mind and try to think about things that you love doing. I think all of us around the table are where we are because we really love the topics that we've chosen. For me personally, I originally thought I was going to go down a very different path, and I fell into into a speech pathology career, and it ended up encompassing everything that I loved. But thinking about what your strengths are, being aware of them, and then coming to open days and having a look around and talking to people, going and watch what people do in their jobs, and just be aware of the world around you. And I think the answer will come in time.
I think when I first started choosing what I wanted to study at uni, I realised that you can actually find a nexus of all your passions, and that's exciting.
Organisational culture and leadership, how does that impact on what you do? And can you think about an example perhaps of how it's helped you?
So with respect to STEM, I've got sort of two roles. I'm an engineer both here, at Sydney University, but I've also been in the Army Reserves for nearly 14 years now. So there I'm a definite minority. So I've seen a number of different types of leadership and a number of different types of leaders. I think the common thing for me that's linked the good leaders together, and this is good leadership in terms of success, in terms of having a coherent team that wants to work for you, those types of things. It's about being focused on the task and not necessarily focused on the differences or problems that you might perceive within your team. It's probably vision, and it's having a goal and a common goal that unites everyone, and then looking at your team and saying who can contribute in what parts to achieve that goal. Goal focused, I would say, and respecting teams' diversity.
I mean, some people say managers are different from leaders.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, to me, leaders, the best kind of leaders are exactly that. They bring a group together and they have a vision, but they're also vulnerable, and I think they show themselves. Yeah, but to me, the best leaders are definitely people that can be humble and are self-aware and self-reflective enough to understand how they impact others as well. So now I'd like to hear about everyone's goals for the future in STEMM and how you think you might be able to make an impact.
Yeah, okay. I'll go first. I guess with me, I'm in a biotech space, so I'm trying to develop something that can help save lives or at least give women a peace of mind. And I'm thinking on a global footprint, even though I'm starting in Australia. And one of the things that's been really exciting for me is just taking it out of lab or PhD work and making it real world. That's already step number one and goal number one. So making it a commercial reality is the main goal. Having it available to women everywhere is the overall goal, but then also extending into other types of cancer.
I like what you were saying, you start off at one point and then you see that actually we could have an effect worldwide. And I'm all for worldwide domination. But I think we really do punch above our weight here in Australia. And I think it's because we listen to opinions from all over the world. So I think the impact ultimately is improving the lives of people with brain injury and their families, and that's the key end point, but it's really how we're going to do that. And technology's, it's been a recurrent theme today, but technology I think is going to be a very big part of the answer.
I think that Australia has a really important role to play in space. We can really get the key players to sit down at a table and work out peaceful solutions to problems. And so my career aspirations are pretty bold, but I would like to be Australia's first dedicated space diplomat.
Actually educating the next generation of engineers and scientists. So a lot of my work is in developing countries, and really the best people who are placed in developing countries to meet the massive challenges that they have in terms of population growth, responding to climate change, all the ecological damage that's been done. The best people to respond to that are actually people from that country or culture, but yet they lack all the opportunities for education. Educating, and especially sort of higher education, educating people from those countries, and then they're in a much better place to go forward.